Good afternoon, everybody. Come on in. Find a seat. My name is Chris Primesberger. I'm the editor of eWeek, and I'm not going to be giving a presentation in a moment, but I'm going to introduce our speaker, Phil Brace. And Phil is president of Seagate's Cloud Systems and Electronic Solutions, and that means all the cloud systems and all the electronic solutions. So he's got a little pull at that company, to say the least. His topic today is flash and hard drives, a winning combination for future data centers. And beforehand, I said to Phil, that doesn't sound very newsy to me. I mean, we've got flash and hard drives in most data centers. Well, he's going to be bringing up some news in this presentation that you'll be really glad you heard today. A little background on him. Phil is he's really responsible for the full Monty of enterprise storage systems and services at Seagate. This includes Seagate's growth initiatives in cloud computing and solid-state IT, and providing new levels of performance for OEM and cloud customers both. He brings more than 20 years of semiconductor and systems experience to his current role. Prior to joining Seagate, just not too long ago, a year or two ago, Phil spent 9 years at LSI in a variety of senior tech and business leadership roles, including executive vice president level positions in storage solutions, storage peripherals, and marketing, communication, strategic planning. Earlier in his career, Brace worked at Intel, where he served as general manager of server platforms, the group marketing of server platforms. He received his master's degree in electrical engineering from Cal State Sacramento and his bachelor's degree in computer engineering from the University of Waterloo, Canada, his home country. So, without any further ado, I give you Mr. Phil Brace of Seagate.
Okay, good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Now I have the unfortunate possibility of a keynote speech being after lunch and after dancers. So my job is to kind of keep you awake. And I was reflecting as I've walked through this show. How many people have been to this show for the last 5 years or so? Yeah, it's kind of grown quite a bit, isn't it? I mean, it's been remarkable, actually. The keynote, the exhibit hall has got quite a bit bigger. The interest has got quite a bit bigger. But one thing that hasn't really changed, it's still kind of like old home week. How many people feel that way? You come by and you just see people you haven't seen for a long time, and they stop you in the halls and, hey, what's going on? And some of the people's badges change, right? My badge has changed a couple times since I've come to this show, and other people's have. So, I put together a few slides today to give you a perspective of some things that are happening, what we think are happening at Seagate, but really in the industry. One of the things that I am really constantly amazed at is just how much is changing in storage right now. I think we hear lots of press in the news about CPUs and all the things that are happening with CPUs. But when you think about what's really happening in the data storage industry, there is a tremendous amount of activity happening. In fact, just the growth of this show, that used to be a pretty small show, is evidence of the fact that things are happening. And you just look at these three kind of trends that I think are happening in the industry. First, if the data is continuing to get bigger, and we can all debate how big it is, but we can all argue, I think it's not inarguable that the data creation is going to continue to explode, and we still all have to keep it. So that's a trend. The second thing is we can all see that data is moving to the cloud. If we look at the exabytes shipped on a per year basis, it continues to grow and grow and grow, but what's happening is the location or the locality of that data is different. In fact, it'll probably continue to go that way as end customers demand a more pay-as-you-grow kind of model. And then what's overlaid on that is IT budgets and GDPs are relatively flat. Anybody that's been watching kind of the economies and things like that, goes up and down, and it's been pretty constrained. So when you add those three variables in, data's continuing to grow, the data's moving locations, and yet budgets are flat, it ends up to be a tremendous time for those people in storage-related technologies, like all of you are. And so I think that for me, and I think for all of us around, we look at the industry and go, wow, there's a lot of really cool stuff that's happening here, right? And I think that, if we look at those things happening at the top with bigger data, more data sources, and different data, we have added into that new applications, right? New workloads, and that really feeds down to the bottom tier, which is where a lot of us are working here today, is around new storage architectures, and really as relates to storage devices and media and what's happening around media. And I think there's a tremendous collective opportunity for us collectively to solve some of the end user problems that are really going to make a big business opportunity for us all and really start solve some end user problems that are just coming to the forefront now as those three items I talked about in terms of bigger data, different locations, and flat budgets are really coming to a head here. So, when we look at, a very simple, we all love to talk about layers, right? We've heard all about the different layers in the storage industry and things like that. But we look really what starts at the top, right? The end customer, what are they looking for today? They're looking for flexibility, pay as you grow, right? A little lower CapEx, move some CapEx into OpEx, things like that. And you start moving down the layers, and what's happened is you've got a bunch of new technologies that are emerging to try and sort the needs of what the end customer actually wants. And what we really need to look at is things that actually kind of cut through some of these layers, and new technologies like NVMe, for example, a lot of us are talking about NVMe today, really help kind of accelerate that cut through to have improved performance and improved value proposition down to the end, the bottom layers there. But as a reminder, right, the end customers themselves actually don't buy media. In fact, they don't really often buy devices. They don't really care about those things. You ask your wife, you ask the IT professionals, do you actually buy the media? Dirty little secret, right? A lot of the highest performance storage devices, be it SSDs or hard drives, use DRAM to get the performance out of it, right? We don't talk about those kind of things, right? And so what is our job as storage professionals, right? Whether it's the emerging media technology, it's to develop these kinds of solutions that integrate the various different types of media that we have in ways that solve some of the business problems and do them not only in a technology way, but also in a business way to go get those sort of things done. So, let's pause for a second and reflect back on the technology evolutions and the technology progress that we've made on multiple fronts. Right, if we look at solid state media, we have had almost a 10,000-fold increase in the density from 1990. And we just look now at the emerging technologies down to 3D and beyond. And I'm not one of these people that projects the end of Moore's Law anytime soon. I believe that engineers will solve the problem. I think you're going to get down to 12 nanometers and 10 nanometers and who knows, even beyond. I've heard it for decades. And I think that's going to continue to go down and continue to be very exciting, right? You look on the magnetic side and you start thinking about, we have line of sight now to, you'll see in a moment here, I think we're shipping today, a terabit per square inch. Right? Think about that for a second, a terabit of information on something the size of your thumbnail. An incredible engineering achievement by a lot of people here in the room and many people around the world to make that happen. And to actually manage that complexity and create the kind of solutions that we need going forward into the future is a tremendous technological achievement that I think we all need to be proud of and continue to push forward and move forward. And on both of those dimensions, right, if we look both at magnetic and solid state, the future continues to be incredibly bright and long in terms of technology innovations. All right, I'll spend a moment on the magnetic side. You heard from my bio, most of my career in the background has actually come from the silicon side. But we look at the magnetic side, and even just with technologies like shingled magnetic recording, where you overlay the track pitches, you can get down to 1.2 terabits a square inch. You can add on two-dimensional recording, where you start going in both directions. And then finally, we've got demonstrations with heated cystic magnetic recording. This is like technology out of science fiction, where you can actually fire a laser down, change the magnetic coercivity of the media, and get to 5 terabits a square inch. Just kind of unbelievable kind of technology. And on the solid state side, right? We mentioned 3D NAND, lots of talk about that. I personally believe that's going to continue to grow and be a significant technology force, right? I'll continue to see planar go to 12 and 10. We haven't seen any announcements there, but I bet you it's going to happen. And then we've got a number of new technologies, right? Whether it's cross-point RAM that's recently been announced, or PCM, or any of the other future contenders, right? The number of innovations and capabilities that we have going forward really are going to continue to push that density envelope forward and be a continued exciting place to be. I think what's important for us collectively as an industry is to remember, man, there are a ton of things that we actually need to do to manage all these things. I think one of the things that's been most, enlightening to me, for those that aren't familiar with SSDs, and I've been around them for quite some time, people think you just plop silicon down and solder it down to a PCB and hand it over. Now, that is about the farthest thing from the truth. There's a tremendous amount of software work that needs to be done to actually get that working right. The recycling, the garbage collection side, working on the flash translation layer, compression, any of the things that need to get done. It is a tremendously complex system underneath it. And what's interesting is many of the things, the techniques that you use to actually manage that media are quite common between HDD and flash, or HDD and magnetic, or magnetic media and flash media. And so what that lends itself to is, hey, how do we create tiered approaches to solve these data problems that we talked about in the first place? And gosh, why is a company like Seagate here at FMS, right? Why does Seagate care? At the end of the day, what we're all about here is storage, right? The client's cell phone long ago have dominated PCs in terms of units, right? And we know the data is moving from the PCs and the clients, where you're not having any drives, you're not having any SSDs in your cell phones either, right? But where is it moving? It's moving to the cloud, right? And there's gobs and gobs of data to go do that. So how do we, as a storage company, create solutions that solve some of those end customer problems that we've got to go work on? And so, when we look at the technology out in time, right, we see a continued drive to get lower cost per bit. And we see, certainly through the end of the decade, probably a penny kind of per gigabit sort of path that we've got to be able to get to in order to solve some of those problems that we talked about in terms of data growing, continue to grow, and IT budgets staying flat. And so when we look at that, both for magnetics and for flash, the imperative for all of us is to continue to push on that technology to grow storage for all of us. We absolutely need to do that. Certainly at Seagate and other companies, we've got very significant investments in this space. And why? Because we need it to sell more storage devices. We need this evolution to continue to happen, and we've got to continue to drive down the cost per bit of flash and of magnetic media to continue to meet that. The lower the flash gets, the more flash we can put not only in our SSDs, but also on our drives. And the more that we can abstract some of the performance that we need to solve some of the aero density problems we have on the magnetic side as well. And so I think that we look at that, we see a world that is continuing to be hybrid for a long period of time. What I mean by hybrid is you're going to have SSDs there, you're going to have archive drives there, you're going to have hybrid drives, performance accelerator drives, and all these kind of things. And I think one of the things that's curious to me is all this discussion around NAND versus something, NAND versus crosspoint, NAND versus something. We never really had this discussion of SRAM, right? SRAM was never really talked about as displacing DRAM. It's just another layer in the memory hierarchy. And that's the way that I think that ultimately it will be deployed going forward. And so when we look at as an example, what companies Seagate are doing, right? We are really working to develop products that are spanning the performance and capacity spectrum. And I think there are many other companies doing that as well. Why are we doing that? Because we see the demand for storage going out in time, and we need everybody here to continue to focus on building those kind of solutions. And I think, when we show this graph, it comes as a surprise to many people that, oh my gosh, look at the number of different products you have out here, right? Whether it's PCIe cards, SSDs, silicon, drives, hybrid drives, storage arrays. We see the market as continuing to move in the area of demanding more and more storage, and that's really what we're looking to do from that side. And so I encourage you to go and not only look at Seagate's booth, because I want you to go see all this stuff, but I encourage you to go around to everybody else's booth too and look at the new innovations and things that are going on there, because one thing I love the most about this show is just the cross-pollination you get. You get to meet all sorts of different people from different industries, and maybe that'll inspire us all to create some new technologies that'll really drive us forward, because we really need it. Right? We have no other choice but to continue to invest and move this ball forward. And it's really independent of what's going on in the day-to-day market. Right? Someone told me once many years ago that you can't focus too much of what's going on, whether the China devaluation, the stock market up and down, and whatever else happens, because at the end of the day, when the market is there, people are going to want to buy new things and new technology. They're not going to want to buy yesterday's stuff. And so it's imperative on all of us in this room to continue to push the ball forward and continue to innovate in that area. So I think I'm going to probably be a little shorter than I expected here today, but I want to leave you with a few final thoughts, right? And hopefully you all agree with me. I think that the data is changing, and what I mean by it's changing, it's continuing to grow and continuing to grow at a pace that is going to continue to accelerate. The location is different. I don't see that changing going forward. And I don't think IT budgets are magically going to get unconstrained either. I think if we all hope for some big change in IT budgets as a percentage of GDP, I think we're fooling ourselves. And so with those three dynamics, right, we collectively have to create solutions that really solve these different economics and workloads that needs to go on, right? And we need new architectures in storage architecture and media required, right? Our friends and collaborators at Micron talked about the fact that really only 5% of the bits shipped today are flash media, right? We've got to continue to move that forward, not only to increase the performance to enable us to ship lots and lots of bits on the magnetic side, but to continue to solve some of those data problems that we're all going to have going forward, right? I think the other thing is that we're constantly seeing now the need for what I'll call tailored solutions, right? I think that we see it, certainly at Seagate, and probably many other companies here see it too. The days of just kind of providing generic blocks of things are probably gone or fading. We spend most of our time working on software, working with applications, working with customers to fine-tune our products to sit in that application, because we've got to end up figuring out a way to deliver more value to the end user and kind of go through all those layers and things I talked about. And so that's going to be an important thing going forward. And so, for me, I'm incredibly excited to be part of the storage industry. I think it's a wonderful place to be. I'm happy to be here at the event. I'll be walking around. I encourage you to all come to the booth. I don't think we're set up today for Q&A, but certainly I'll be happy to stay around for a little while and answer questions that you have. And certainly look forward to continuing to move the storage industry forward. So with that, I've never been at a presentation that I say I wish it went longer. And so I have the opportunity to give you back a few minutes earlier than I had planned. So enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
All right. Phil Brace, thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. Yeah, we have like an extra 12 minutes here. If you want to do a song and dance, you could do that. They do that earlier, Phil, while you're here, we have just a couple minutes. Can I just ask you one question?
Sure.
Intel Micron came out with a new, very interesting technology just this past week called 3D XPoint. Uh-huh. Where does that fit in, do you think, going forward from what you know?
If I look at 3D XPoint, I really see it in some ways fitting between DRAM and NAND. If you look at where that is, we had the opportunity to certainly talk with our partners at Micron and Intel. When we looked at it, we certainly think there's a lot of promise for that space. I see it focused in areas like in-memory computing and in-memory databases and those kind of things. And I see it, again, as adding a new tier to the memory hierarchy. I mean, for those of us that have been around computer architecture for years and years and years, this is yet another memory hierarchy there. And I think that regardless of how XPoint kind of turns out, I think it's another interesting technology that we can add and develop kind of more heterogeneous solutions. And that's really the point. I think that there's going to be more of those kind of things, whether it's cross-point memory or phase change or spin torque or ReRAM or whatever you want to call it, right? There's going to be continued innovations on that point. But the end customer itself buys products that need to be abstracted from those actual physical details of the memory.
Thanks, Phil, very much.
Great. Thank you.